You did well on Galt. Welcome back.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Ragnar felt a little uplifted by Hakon's words. Even so little praise from the taciturn old wolf was praise indeed. His words of thanks fell on empty air. Hakon had already turned and left. So Ragnar is the sergeant's favourite now, as well as the Inquisitor's girl, Nils mocked. What a crawler.
Well, somebody has to be the hero around here,
Ragnar said.
But don't worry. When the Skalds get round to chanting the sagas, I'm sure they'll mention the fact that I had 3 trusty comrades who polished and mended for me.
I can see it now, said Nils. Ragnar's saga, a stirring tale of a warrior who died when his neck broke under the strain of carrying his huge head.
Whose constant boasting so annoyed his trusty comrades that they murdered him in his sleep, more like?
Striborn said, nastily.
Who spent so much of his time lying around and snoring while his companions did all the bloody work that they eventually booted him off their ship,
added Sven.
It's nice to know I'm appreciated,
said Ragnar.
Now, if you don't mind, Sven, how about passing me some more of that ale?
Yes, my liege,
Sven smirked, handing it to him in such a way that most of it went over Ragnar. And how about some more food? Added Nils, tossing a hunk of cheese at him. Within seconds, food and ale were flying everywhere, amidst gales of raucous laughter. The Adeptus Astartes forged the mightiest of legends during the most perilous of times. Each chapter, led by individuals of near-mythic pedigree, those that serve as their lieutenants can often exceed the legacies of even the most venerated heroes of yore. For today, we shall elucidate a wolf lord whose loyalty to the Imperium and ferocity in battle are among the most fearsome known to mankind. The Black Wolf of the Vilka Fenrika, Ragnar Blackmane. To live among the death world of Fenris is to brave among the most perilous environments known to man. Its surface constantly shifting as tectonic plates thrash and shift. Whether blanketed in blizzards, lava flows, or drowning tides, its people are hardy in the extreme. Rival tribes fighting for ever-changing settlements outside the bounds of Azerheim. Such was the fate of the Grimskulls, slaughtered by the tribe of the Thunderfists, that the slight made to them would act as the catalyst for a warrior of legend. Ragnar Thunderfist, son of High Jarl Torvald, braved the Sea of Dragons, the worst storm he had ever witnessed, threatening to capsize his father's vessel, the Spear of Russ. Harboring a stranger in their midst, a hulking wolf priest known as Rannoch Icewalker, in exchange for iron ingots, the peculiar soul sought passage to the Iron Temple of the mountains. Beset by a sea dragon during their voyage, poor Jorvik fell to its bite before Ragnar stood against the beast, hurling a harpoon into its eye before Rannoch destroyed the beast with a strange icon in his hand. Cast overboard by the death knell of the creature, Ragnar's life would be saved by the imposing priest, the sea calming with the dragon slain as the warrior laughed at this trifling victory. Wishing the boy well, it would be months until the wolf priest would reunite with the Thunderfists, though the warrior warned Ragnar that for his sake, he wished never to see him again. The doom of his people not forestalled during the dead of night as the Thunderfists reveled. Grimskull stalked beyond the bounds of their settlement. Posting those sentries, lax as they were in their comfort, the Thunderfists drank and feasted, Ragnar stealing away his love, Anna, as their affections began to blossom. Yet this would be the last moment of pure joy Ragnar would feel, for at the height of his tribe's power, Jarl Torvald fell at the hands of the Grimskull chieftain, Striborn. Rallying his kin, caught unawares by the slaughter, Ragnar fought like a man possessed. Yet as the massacre reached its zenith, bloodshed halted with the presence of giants watching silently in the darkness. Sky warriors, clad in ceramite, stood immobile among the slaughter, the choosing of aspirants to join their might forcing the Grimskulls to relent as Thunderfists collected arms to fight them on an equal footing. Now ready, the battle continued, Wolf Priest Rannoch watching Ragnar intently as the promising scion felled countless foes. Crossing blades with Striborn, the Grimskull drove his axe deep within Ragnar's breast, his life seemingly over as the Thunderfist line came to an end. Awakening from his agonies endured within the swallowing darkness, Ragnar found only a faint scar where his wound had been wrought. Signs of surgeries and implants pocking his skin, as Rannoch explained his status as a chooser of the slain. Finding his nemesis Stribiorn to also be ascended to the choosing, Ragnar vowed to slay the murderer of his people, as Sergeant Hakon assumed the role of his mentor. Entrusted weapons for their training, Ragnar alongside the aspirant Stribiorn, Sven, Henk, and Kjell braved the wilds of Fenris. Fighting an ice troll as part of their trials, though Henk would perish to the bite of the beast, Ragnar and his kinsmen survived the ordeal. Each new batch of aspirants added to their number, whittled away by the trials, or executed by Hakon for cowardice. Tasked with passing through the gate of Morkai to prove his worthiness to begin his transformation into a true space wolf, Ragnar resisted the call of the blood god, Khorne, as he endured the trial. Said to be the closest to ever fail of all aspirants witnessed by Hakon and Rannoch, the wolf priest warned Ragnar that although he had succeeded, his hatred would prove to be his most exploitable weakness. Drinking from the cup of Wulfen, alongside those who had passed the gate of Morkai, the Canis Helix within Ragnar's gene seed implantation activated. The transformation incurred to himself and each of his kin, turning them more bestial in nature as their sight, smell, and might burgeoned. Ordered to embark upon the test of Morkai, armed with only a piece of flint, Ragnar braved the wilderness alone as he fashioned a makeshift spear from the stone. His objective, to brave the harsh weather as he ventured for days to reach the fortress monastery, the Ayet. Finding Kjell during his venture, now having surrendered to the transformation into a Wulfen, Ragnar slew his only remaining friend before being confronted by among the most dangerous threats of Fenris. Slaying a mighty black-maned wolf during his trial, its fur proved a worthy pelt to protect him from the elements. The proof of his kill, the first made against such a beast in living memory. Now ascended to the true form of a space marine, Ragnar learned of the chronicles of his chapter, the Imperium's history-imparting machines filling his mind with knowledge as befit his transhuman physique. Joining his kinsmen who had succeeded in the trials, Sven, Lars, and Stribiorn, the Bloodclaws of weapons instructor Sergeant Hengist conducted their first mission to test their mettle. Yet this chance encounter would forever change the fate of the Thunderfist. Confronted by a thousand-sun sorcerer, Maddox, within a temple of chaos deep beneath Fenris' mountains, this stain of heresy could not be allowed to survive. Lucky to have barely escaped the fell edge of a chaos blade, wielded by a thrall of the ruinous powers, Ragnar dueled the ancient foe of the rout to no avail. His life saved by Stribiorn, who incurred the wound in Ragnar's stead. Though the sorcerer escaped justice, the valor of the Grimskull would not be forgotten. Forgiving his nemesis of his past sins made against his tribe, Ragnar realized that they were now truly brothers reforged in battle, carrying Stribiorn's wounded body back to the care of the chapter as Logan Grimnar ordered a full-scale cleanse of the Chaos Temple. For while an old grudge had now been absolved, a new one had taken root, for neither Ragnar nor Maddox would forget their feud, newly begun. His Bloodclaw team, now bonded through toil and suffering, Ragnar's next mission to the world of Arius would once again invite conflict with the forces of chaos. High King Logan Grimnar, beseeched by his stalwart ally, Inquisitor Ivan Sternberg, to aid in the reclamation of his homeworld, the sign of the Bale Star loomed over the planet, heralding an incursion of fell intent. Agreeing to aid his returned comrade, Grimnar ordered Hakon's Bloodclaws to debrief the Inquisitor's apprentice, Kara Isan, and Commander Gull on the location of an artifact, the Talisman of Lokos. An Eldari Farseer artifact, broken during a prior campaign waged by the Space Wolves, Sternberg requested the first of 3 fragments in the care of the chapter's Hall of Battles to be requisitioned before embarking. Venturing through the tides of the warp, within the Voidcraft, Light of Truth, the first mission beyond the bounds of Fenris would be a true test of Ragnar and his kin. Isan conducting a vision quest, harnessing the first fragment's power. The location of the second fragment resided within the Temple of Zikar on the planet of Gult 3, overrun with greenskins. The Bloodclaws began their mission to infiltrate the Orc lines which swarmed the position. Their defeat of a river dragon upon making planetfall, followed by procuring Orc vestments and a buggy from their slain foes in order to slip past the greenskin tide. Drawn into a race by the anarchic Xenos to retain their disguise, the Bloodclaws bested the simpletons driving maneuvers as Inquisitor Kara's psychic manipulations located their charge. Combating the Orc leader, Gurg, who possessed the fragment of Lycos, which it regarded as the Eye of Mork. The war boss harnessed its energies to heal its wounds. Brother Lars slain in the confrontation, as Gurg demanded the Bloodcorps give him their Eye of Gork. Ragnar knew that no matter the wounds inflicted, their might would not best the greenskin, nor rip the artifact from its clutches. Feigning to surrender despite the disdain shown by Hakon and his peers, as Inquisitor Sternberg calibrated a teleporter homing beacon, Ragnar pivoted to requesting a duel of honor. Baffled by the young wolf's ramblings, the greenskin charged to claim its prize, Ragnar managing to claim the second fragment before the band of warriors were extracted from the fray. Locating the final, third fragment of the talisman via another vision quest, Kara saw a vast space hulk within proximity to the dead son of Coriolis. Carving a path through Genestealers, which barred their way, the Bloodclaws succeeded in collecting the final fragment of the Talisman of Lokos, the restoration of the relic warranting their venture to Arrhaeus to finally end the madness overwhelming Sternberg's homeworld. Deployed to the Black Pyramid from whence the talisman was first claimed, upon arrival, the Phantom of an Eldar warned the Bloodclaws and Inquisitors not to release that which remained locked within. Ignoring the plea of the Farseer, the Talisman of Lokos released the Great Unclean One, Botulas, from its confinement, its freedom from 3,000 years of dormancy, orchestrated from the start by its servant, Commander Gull. The cause of the Chaos Uprising, wrought by the duplicitous sons of Ares, Gull received reward for his treachery, as a hole in his chest, incurred from Ragnar's bolt pistol, did little to put down the thrall of Botulas. Fighting Gull's ascended form to little effect, Ragnar's life would be saved by Sergeant Hakon, as his sword parted his head from his neck. The Black Pyramid amplifying the power of Nurgle, as those less fortunate reanimated into hordes of plague zombies. Inquisitor Sternberg fell in battle, as the weapons of the Bloodclaws did little to harm the champion of Nurgle, Botulas's flesh resealing with every rend made by their bolters and blades. Unwilling to allow the demon to spread further suffering, Inquisitor Kara Isan siphoned the power of the Talisman of Lokos using her psychic might, sacrificing her very soul to seal away the demon once more. All of the Inquisitor's retinue had perished, yet the Bloodclaws had survived, the Space Wolves retrieving the now inert Talisman of Lokos before returning to the Fang. Reporting the deeds of his Bloodclaws to Logan Grimnar, Hakon spoke highly of the valor of his pups and sacrifices made by Sternberg and Isan. Ares had been saved, and Ragnar's ascension to the rank of Grey Hunter with continued service seemed assured. Yet the tale of this young son of Rus is anything if not conventional, and the next time he would face the pawns of chaos, they would imperil his rise through the ranks of the Rout. Serving for 10 years as the oldest Bloodclaws not to have ascended to the rank of Grey Hunter, Sven and Ragnar knew their reward must loom close as they continued to enact their duty to the chapter. Recalled from the Dragon Peaks of Azerheim, slaying ice wraiths, their Jarl, Beric Thunderfist, recalled his great company at the behest of High King Grimnar. His master bearing the same name as Ragnar, not by virtue of blood, but by the Power Fist which replaced his severed arm. The reminder of his duel with Khan the Betrayer instilled his great company with pride, knowing their liege had survived battle against such a terrible foe. As the Jarls convened, Logan Grimnar relayed news that their protectorate, Garm, had fallen to the thralls of chaos, the Thousand Sons most active within the Garm region, as for decades they had toiled to claim the industrial world. The site of the chapter relic, the Spear of Rus, the Wolf King had constructed a cairn to honor Garm of his Wolfguard as his spirit watched over the priceless relic crafted by the Allfather. Rebellion erupted across the planet due to the planetary governor raising taxes tenfold to sate his greed. The leadership of the fallen priest, Father Sergius, proclaiming heresy as he decreed that the Emperor had forsaken the Garmite populace. Aided by the Navigator House, Belisarius, the chapter en masse made all haste to Garm, Ragnar and Sven aboard Beric's flagship, the Fist of Rus, venturing through the warp. Breaching the Chaos Warfleet, defending the planet, Beric's great company made planetfall. Their objective to find Jurgen Whitemane's waystation outpost, stalling as swarms of Garmite heretics overran their position. Saving the life of his Jarl during the battle, Beric complimented Sergeant Hakon for training such mighty warriors. Their venture to the Shrine of the Spear of Rus, once more fraught with heavy resistance. Close to being felled by his enemies, Ragnar's life would be saved by Sergeant Hakon. Yet as the veteran's slaughter drenched his ceramite in blood, a stray burst of gunfire pierced his skull. Enraged at the sight of his mentor fallen in battle, Ragnar tore through the Garmites as reinforcements joined the fray at the entrance of the shrine. Taking Hakon's body to be tended by the apothecaries, Beric Thunderfist allowed Ragnar to temporarily lead his pack until their task was complete. Meeting with Hakon as he lay within a medical sarcophagus, the loss of much of his brain matter and injuries to his spine would not allow him to fight again, even with the cold embrace of a dreadnought chassis. His last moments spent telling Ragnar how proud he was of him. Doubtless, his pack was the greatest Hakon had ever trained from Rusvik. A bitter moment of pride, knowing that he would never see Hakon again. Returning to the war zone as Ragnar's pack investigated the Iron Fang keep of Garm, the Bloodclaws found upon a group of loyalist forces, led by the Iron Fang industrial militia captain, Jan Trainer. Trainer's insight, spent as a maintenance hand within the service tunnels below, crucial to aiding the Space Wolves' advance. Ragnar contacted the Castra Fenris command center, requesting a gunship to extract Jan's men. Holding the high ground position within the keep, as Brother Gundar dispatched the Thunderhawk, Hawk of Azerheim, cultists swarmed their position until an agent of the Inquisition, Gideon, and his Moravian regiment flanked the heretics. Demanding Trainer and his men to be turned over to the Inquisitor's care, Ragnar stood defiant until his Jarl interceded to support his young Bloodclaw. With Trainer's information, the Space Wolves began their push into the Shrine of Russ. Ragnar's pack given to Sergeant Joris to command, as the Titans of Salonus, led by Lothar Ironheart, deployed to the vanguard. Capturing a cultist with information on Father Sergius' alliance with the Pawns of Sinch, the demon within the heretic revealed that sacrifices were being made within the temple to summon Magnus the Red into the material realm. Their ultimate objective, to siphon the Spear of Russ's power to aid in his return. Runepriest Skalagrim exorcised the demon as Beric Thunderfist began preparations to thwart the ritual. Fighting by the side of their Jarl, Joris's pack fought their way to the spear as a giant warp gate erupted. Ragnar resisting the enticements of the Changer of Ways as an old nemesis walked from the gate. Sorcerer Maddox once more taunting Ragnar to fight him in battle. As the young pup failed to match the ancient traitor's martial skill, Maddox revealed himself to be the culprit of the uprising of Garm. Hoping to revive the amassed strength of the Thousand Suns Legion and claim the planet as their new homeworld, millennia of planning beyond the material realm was close to fruition. With aid from Sven, Ragnar wounded Maddox enough to force the sorcerer to withdraw, the visage of his master, the Crimson King, materializing as its glare held fixed on the young wolf. Father Sergius, in an act of sheer panic, hurled the spear towards Ragnar, time seemingly slowing as Ragnar caught the relic mid-flight and returned its sharp edge to pierce the priest's chest. Retrieving the spear from Sergius' lifeless body as a last-ditch effort, Ragnar threw the spear at Magnus' remaining eye, the demon Primarch screaming in agony as its blade bit deep into his retina, banishing him once more into the warp. The Chaos Gate collapsed, Beric Thunderfist saving Ragnar's life as in its death knell, dozens of Astartes were dragged into its embrace. Mopping up the survivors, the Space Wolves purged the planet of heresy. A great victory won, yet at significant cost to their future. The prophecy that the Wolf King, Leman Russ, during the Wolf Time, would take up the spear, now seemingly impossible. Though Ragnar had shown great courage, blasphemy had been made against the chapter. Sven, having lost his hand during the duel against Maddox, would earn him a bionic replacement and promotion to the rank of Grey Hunter alongside Strybjorn. Yet Ragnar would not likewise ascend for his deeds. Answering for his actions during a conclave of the Wolf Lords and High King, though Wolf Priest Rannick volunteered to vouch for Ragnar's honor, many demanded punishment for the loss of their sacred relic. Seeing an opportunity to appease Ragnar's detractors, whilst also sparing him disgrace, Logan Grimnar ordered Ragnar to serve in exile as a member of the Wolfblade. A band of outcast warriors in service to their chapter's ancient allies, Navigator House Belisarius, with word that Celestarch Adrian Belisarius had been assassinated on Holy Terra, the Great Wolf saw an opportunity for Ragnar to find purpose in an unorthodox manner. Accompanying the Celestarch's daughter, Gabriella, as her bodyguard during the voyage to the Throne World, Ragnar would replace the slain veteran Skander Bloodyaxe upon arrival to the palace of Belisarius. Within their first day of departure from Fenris, an attempt on Gabriella's life would be made. A Jokero Death Spider filled with Zarthak's poison, destroyed by Ragnar, as his instincts proved invaluable in preserving her life. Finding the body of the spider's controller within their voidcraft, Ragnar remained on high alert until their safe passage to Holy Terra. Entrusting Gabriella to the care of House Belisarius' security upon arrival to their palace, Ragnar met with his new battle brothers, Thorfinn the Wayfarer, Hagar the Mountain, and their leader, Valkov. Warned by Thorin that Terra is the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, though Ragnar struggled to assimilate into the culture of the Throne World, reminders such as a portrait of his Primarch, alongside his brother Sanguinius and the Emperor within the palace, reminded him of his duty. Gathering intelligence to identify the perpetrator of the assassination of the Celestarch, the patriarch of the rival Navigator house, Cesare Faraci, revealed that an anti-mutant cult known as the Brotherhood of Light was targeting multiple houses. Said to be funded by the merchant known as Pantheus, the Wolfblade infiltrated his asteroid mansion, seeking answers. The capture and interrogation of the merchant by Commander Valkov, providing answers. House Belisarius' Chamberlain, alongside the Elder Lady, Eleanor, sanctioning further investigation. As the Astartes believed their mission to have gone too well, the conniving cousin of Gabriella, Scorpius, warned that Cesare Faraci was manipulating them. Claiming him to be the benefactor of the assassin, Scorpius asserted that Cesare intended to become the new Paternoval envoy of the Navigator houses, and thus ascend as a High Lord of Terra. Loaned to Kalida's assassin, Xenophan, by an unknown official of the Adeptus Administratum, Faraci ordered the killer to end the Wolfblade's investigation as they ventured into the warrens of Terra's Underhive. Discovering military-grade weapons to be in possession of the extremists, the Wolfblade were confronted by a powerful Psyker and Xenophan. Slaying the witch as the mighty Hagar incurred an injury from the assassin, Ragnar dragged the hulking giant from the fray into the sewers with no sign of Thorin. Finding upon the scribe, Linus Serpico III, the unassuming thrall led Ragnar to a healer known as Brother Malburius, an old medic of the Adeptus Ministorum who treated Hagar's wounds. Asking Linus to accompany the Wolfblade to locate the Brotherhood, Ragnar began to respect the mortal's courage when set in stark contrast to the threats he faced. Snatching the fanatic Antonius from the rabble of the Brotherhood, the Wolfblade learned of Pantheus' standing as a figurehead of the cult from their interrogation. Locating a communication node to enable Thorin to find their location, the Wolfblade, now reunited, relayed their findings to Valkov before returning to the palace of Belisarius. Redeployed to quell a riot within the Navigator Quarter, with the Wolfblade absent, the ambitious Scorpius let Xenophan into the domains of the palace before being murdered by the assassin. Swarms of the Zealots followed in Xenophan's wake, overrunning the House of Elders as they began to cut through the security countermeasures and butcher the senior navigators. Returning to the palace with haste, Ragnar and his kin found Gabriella, the slain body of the decoy of the incumbent Celestarch, Lady Juliana, alarming the Wolfblade. Facing the assassin in battle, Hagar once more fell, a poisoned dart to his head, incapacitating the enormous Astartes as Ragnar staved off the killing blow. Unable to match the assassin's skills at arms, Ragnar succumbed to the feral beast within, tearing at Xenophan's face with his teeth until his rampage was done. Awakening to find Hagar alive, and Thorin to have slain what little remained of the assassin, the Wolfblade had successfully protected their liege and were rewarded for their efforts. Celestarch Juliana entrusting Ragnar with the relic blade, Frostfang, for his service. This relic, once wielded by the first of the Wolfblades during the era of the Great Crusade, had passed to Skandar Bloody Axe and now belonged to Ragnar. Forged by the legendary Iron Priest, Fergus Forgrim, the secrets used in its construction died with its maker, yet proves a match for any weapon wielded by the Wolf Lords of his chapter. Ragnar vowing to be a worthy inheritor of such an heirloom of House Belisarius' past. Remaining as part of the Wolfblade for a further decade of service, though Ragnar longed to return to his chapter, tales of his deeds banishing the Crimson King were espoused by Rannick within the halls of Fenris. The newest recruit of the Wolfblade, Magni, speaking of the Wolf Priest's tales when he was training as an initiate of the route, Ragnar felt some measure of pride, knowing that he was not regarded with disdain by his former kinsmen. His last mission in service to House Belisarius made upon the jungle world of Hyades, an ape-lizard hybrid Xenos native to the planet, known as the Reptos, had burgeoned, requiring a purge. As a protectorate of House Belisarius, the loss of its promethium-rich mines could threaten their influence. The Wolf played a perfect means to investigate the escalation of the infestation. Meeting with Governor Pelias, Tech Priest Varnus, and the commander of the Hyades militia, Cadmus, the Wolfblade fought to defend the city of Lethe, despite Ragnar's instincts to distrust Cadmus. Yet in orbit of the planet, another band of Astartes readied for war, the Dark Angels. Captain Jeremiah Gaius, tasked by Supreme Grandmaster Azrael with purging a fallen angel of their sinful past. This veteran of the Deathwing led the Interrogator kill team, Lion's Pride, alongside his kinsmen, Elijah, Nathaniel, Gilead, Sebastian, and Marius. Making planetfall, it would not take long for Ragnar's exceptionally keen sense of smell to sniff out the Dark Angels, the unmistakable scent of transhuman physiology leading the Wolfblade to confront the Sons of the Lion within the palace grounds of Lethe, as Magni made haste to warn Cadmus. Fired upon by the Dark Angels, Ragnar cautiously pursued, knowing that traps were being laid. 6 Dark Angels stood against 3 Wolfblades, as the attempt to subdue the Astartes halted with the arrival of Cadmus, causing the kill team to use blind grenades to cover their escape within the depleted Prometheum mines. Ordering Magni to return to Gabriella as the Wolfblade readied to pursue, Jeremiah contacted his commander, Interrogator Chaplain Vargas. His kill team's discovery forcing Vargas to deploy a full-scale assault of the planet. Aboard the Vinco Redemptor in orbit of Hyades, Vargas brooked no failure. His uncompromising methods, which had seen to his perfect record of recovering fallen angels, not to be sundered by the mistakes of others. Taunted by the fallen angel from the surface, Vargas ordered drop-pod assaults and Thunderhawk incursions. Planetary Governor Pelias sending a distress signal to counter the unprompted aggression made by the Dark Angels. As the Wolfblade pursued into the mines, mortal soldiers on the surface perished, fending off the assault of the Sons of the Lion, their Hellhound tanks and artillery blunting their advance only temporarily. Confronting the Lion's Pride, the Wolfblade, with aid from the mortal lieutenant, Markham, unleashed their fury. The ancient rivalry, first stoked by the Wolf King and Lion of Caliban, once more rearing its ugly head as they brawled with blades and bare fists. Yet as the feud escalated, Earthshaker artillery bombarded their position, Lieutenant Markham's men, as well as Gilead, Sebastian, and Marius, perishing in the blast. Contacting Cadmus, demanding answers, the commander gloated that he had fired upon their position with no explanation as to why, Jeremiah surrendering himself and his men to the Wolfblade to prevent further unnecessary bloodshed. Asking for a chance to seek vengeance against Cadmus, though Captain Jeremiah could not reveal the fallen past of his chapter, Ragnar saw within the warrior true sincerity to absolve his men of shame. Alongside Jeremiah, Nathaniel, and Elijah, the Wolfblade ventured to House Belisarius, as meanwhile, Cadmus fired upon Magni with his plasma pistol, taking Gabriella into his custody. Yet in their moment of direst need, fate showed kindness, for in orbit, Jarl Beric Thunderfist aboard the Fist of Rus returned from a patrol of the Fenrisian fiefdoms. Ordering Vargas to answer for his quarantine of the planet, the Interrogator Chaplain refused to stand down, Beric ordering Mikal of his Wolfguard to deploy to the surface as he attacked the Dark Angel's fleet. Returning to find Gabriella gone and Magni fatally wounded, Ragnar held the dying young pup in his arms until his last breath, vowing to avenge his kinsman's death as the Astartes made all haste to pursue Cadmus. Cadmus, in truth, to be the fallen angel to which the Astartes sought, his alliance with the scheming sorcerer, Maddox, made not by mere chance, but a means for the son of Magnus to bloody the nose of his rival. Orchestrating a war between the Space Wolves and Dark Angels, Maddox intended to retrieve their gene seed by manipulating the Reptos Xenos to harvest them from the dead. The gene seed's combination with the Spear of Rus, now in the Thousand Sons' possession, allowing for the destruction of the route. Aided by Tech Priest Varnus, as he located the fallen angel, as the Wolfblade gave pursuit, Thousand Sons Astartes and demons began to beset the war zone. Varnus and Governor Pelias slain by Cadmus's men, Ragnar fought his way to the Fallen's position before once more facing his nemesis, Maddox, the coward falling back, having claimed ample Dark Angel and Space Wolf gene seed for his scheme. Rescuing Gabriella from Cadmus's command center, the Wolfblade and Lion's Pride captured the heretic as he attempted to bargain for his life, Ragnar feigning such a compact as the Fallen revealed the true extent of Maddox's plan before being slain by Jeremiah. petitioning Vargas to end the hostilities with Cadmus's body ready to be retrieved. The Lion's Pride secured their charge before the interrogator chaplain withdrew to let the Space Wolves purge what remained. Though the Dark Angels had withdrawn, a Chaos fleet had arrived in orbit. The Reptos on the surface still sowing mayhem as a burning eye marked the planet's doom, fueled by its Promethium stores. The Fist of Russ firing upon the largest Chaos cruiser with its Nova cannon, as Beric's forces attempted to board the next with their ship's systems stalling. The Wolfblade followed Maddox to a ritual site he had established. Aided by the venerable dreadnought, Gaimir ice-fisted, the forces of Tzeentch spilled from Chaos portals as Ragnar pushed towards Maddox. Escaping once more, the sorcerer admitted he had underestimated the Astartes, the grudge held between such proud chapters, seemingly unable to be put aside, were it any other Astartes other than Ragnar. While Beric's forces purged the taint of chaos from Hyades, the Wolfblade ventured to Fenris with all haste to relay their dire portents. The High King listening to Gabriella's visions of the Spear of Russ and Ragnar's own testimony of Maddox's schemes. Stationed with the forces within the Aet, until their entire chapter might could be amassed to combat the threat, Ragnar reunited with his old friend Sven Dragonblood as he briefly basked in the triumph of his campaigning. Reports of several planets within the protection of the Fenris system reached the High King, all beset by overwhelming chaos uprisings across 24 worlds. Beric Thunderfist battling Maddox on the world of Charis, the sorcerer fatally wounded the Wolf Lord with the Spear of Russ before capturing his rune priest, Alric, to conduct his fell sorceries. The slight made against the former master of Ragnar, a slight too terrible to ignore for a veteran of 537 campaigns fought as Jarl. Joining Beric's great company once more, Ragnar and his Wolfblade ventured to the world of Charis, alongside the young wolf priest, Sigurd, and his aggressive Bloodclaws. Making planetfall as 3 separate packs before converging to meet with Inquisitor Volt of the Ordo Malleus, the Wolfblade and their kin confronted the Thousand Sons and their demonic allies. Wolf Priest Sigurd lost in the battle as ethereal energies consumed his form. Every member of the packs felt the wolfbite surge within their blood as the curse of the Wolfen seemed to escalate. Lady Gabriella, believing that the Chaos forces attempted to link Charis to the Eye of Terror as a means to more quickly traverse real space at near instantaneous speeds, nothing short of a direct assault of the Shadow World beyond the Immaterium would stem the tide. Gambling victory on a suicide mission, wherein they would disable the Galafield of the Fist of Russ, a strike team led by Volt would traverse through a small pocket of real space bleeding between Charis and the Shadow World. Having never ordered the extermination of a single world during his 150 years of service as an Inquisitor, Volt refused to tarnish his staunch legacy on the world of Charis, even should his life be forfeit in the trying. Transmitting to the Shadow World at the cost of the Fist of Russ, Ragnar watched the vessel go down fighting as his team made planetfall. Gabriella within their number, sensing Maddox fueling a ritual within the area known as the Harvest of Damnation. Fighting off Raptor Chaos Space Marines, a hulking rune priest of yore would intervene, Torvald the Reaver. His grey ceramite adorned with ancient runes, clearly defining him as a member of the long-lost 13th Great Company. Wolf Priest Sigurd standing by his side as the immaterial energies that had consumed him had teleported him across the breach in real space. Sigurd explained that the Wolfen curse had been tampered with as a direct result of Maddox's meddling. Meeting with the old wolf, Bolvi Greybeard, the once companion of the Wolf King, inspired the Wolfblade to thwart Maddox's ritual, knowing the might of the 13th Great Company would support their advance. Telling Ragnar that Leman Russ was by no means lost to the chapter. The Wolf King had always kept his word when leading his legion, and the spear alike would not be lost to the forces of chaos. Assaulting Maddox's palace by the side of the phantom legends of the rout, Inquisitor Volk perished in battle as Maddox inflicted a wound onto Hagar with the Spear of Russ. Grabbing the spear as its blade dug deep into his flesh, Hagar hurled the relic to Gabriella as Torrin succumbed to the wolf bite at the sight of his injured comrade-in-arms. Saving Gabriella's life following her injury by a black blade of chaos, Ragnar retrieved the spear and confronted the fell visage of Magnus the Red. Still weakened from his prior incursion, once more Ragnar would hurl the spear at his eye, breaking the spell of Maddox before ending the life of his nemesis as the wolf spear drove deep into his chest. The death of the sorcerer, pulling Beric Thunderfist's wounded soul from the brink of death, Hagar would be less fortunate as Ragnar took his Alehorn to be placed upon his sarcophagus within the Aet. Returning the Gene Seed of the Mountain and Spear of Rust to his chapter, the Space Wolves welcomed the Blackmane back into the fold with open arms. His tenure as a Wolfblade of House Belisarius ended with distinction, as Lady Gabriella and Torrin the Wayfarer wished him well. With Ragnar now reinstated as a member of his chapter, it would not be long before his ascension to the rank of Wolflord. Deployed to the Bladestar cluster, overrun by the Bloodaxe Greenskins, their leader, Barzag Khan, styled itself after the battle doctrines of the White Scars chapter following their combat in prior campaigns. Single-handedly defeating the warlord upon the Antilian Plateau, Beric Thunderfist would instate Ragnar as a member of his Wolf Guard, completely circumventing the rank of Grey Hunter. As was the right to grow a beard as a sign of such a rank, Ragnar keeps his face clean-shaven to mark his lack, learning from Beric's teachings for years until his liege fell in battle. Put low by the Khorne champion, Gorok's Bloodfist on the world of Bakar during 983.M41, its chaos-tainted axe felled the Thunderfist as Ragnar fought far from his side, consumed by his fury. Blaming himself for the death of his Jarl, Ragnar tracked the Chaos Space Marine to the Shrine World of Perfidium. His victory against the traitor marked by hurling his broken corpse from the Templum Incarnatus to the pit 3,000 feet below. Entrusted with leadership of the great company of the Thunderfists with vengeance achieved, Ragnar renamed them the Blackmanes in honor of the wolf pelt which he carried into every battle, as this once-in-an-era Wolflord was the youngest in the chapter's history to ever be appointed such a prestigious rank. Chosen by High King Grimnar often as the spear tip of the most dangerous engagements, such as Logan's trust in the Blackmanes, that only his own great company of champions can best their deeds. Showing potential enough to be the greatest space wolf Astartes to ever grace the stars, his company's Claws of Rust drop pod maneuvers have sundered countless foes during his short tenure as Wolflord. Benefiting from an almost otherworldly keen sense for danger, Ragnar is always the first into the fray and the last to leave as the bite of Frostfang tears his enemies to ribbons. Aiding his chapter's hunt for the Wolfen, with prophecies of the Wolf Time seeming to come to fruition, his deeds made on the world of Dragos, rescuing both his feral kin and elements of the Adeptus Mechanicus, left stranded on the planet, gloried by his chapter. His most venerable battle, made during the era Indomitus against the Prophet of Gork and Mork, Gazgul Mag Uruk Fraka. Upon the world of Krongar, the Blackmane faced the wrath of the mightiest Orc-War seen in history. His loyal Fenrisian wolves, Svangeir and Ulfgeir, slain by the Greenskins, Ragnar suffered several mortal wounds during the combat, persevering through sheer bloody-mindedness and brutality before decapitating the Greenskin with Frostfang at the cost of his arm and neck being broken. Unable to be revived within a dreadnought sarcophagus, only the largely untested surgeries of the Rubicon Primaris could save the young Wolf Lord. Yet Ragnar crossed the Rubicon after days of grueling punishment. Now ascended in stature, strength, endurance, and skill, the Blackmane continues to fight in the name of the Allfather to this day. His enemy Gazgul, likewise reborn, thanks to the ministrations of the mad dog Grotsnik, with his heads fitting to a more powerful body. Most within the chapter believe him to be the inevitable successor of High King Logan Grimnar, though regardless of his immense pedigree, his anger remains his most dangerous weakness. His impetuous nature proving a boon on occasion, regardless, strength alone does not make a great leader, and with only mere decades as Jarl under his belt, many wonder if the return of the Wolf King is a more likely alternative to Ragnar's rise as Great Wolf.
There are no safe places. You have to be prepared to fight anywhere.
Spoken like a true space wolf. But tell me, how would you feel about fighting in a place where you were born and grew up?
I have,
said Ragnar automatically, casting his mind back to that long ago time.
I saw my father killed, and my family enslaved.
Somehow that doesn't reassure me, Ragnar.
I don't suppose it would,
he said, as the realization of what he had said sunk in. She smiled.
It serves me right for asking the question in the first place.
No, it doesn't. This is your home. You have a right to be upset. You still have to fight, though, if you want to keep it.
Those are the words of a Fenrisian.
The words are true no matter where they come from. In this universe, there is little else we can do but fight for our place, if we want to keep it. There are plenty who would take it from us.
That's certainly true if you're a navigator.
It's true for everybody, even a space marine.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Ragnar's tale is that of raw talent, honed through trials wrought by misfortune from well-intentioned deeds. Though spared the ignominy of blasphemy, with the return of the Spear of Russ, the Blackmane's ferocity nonetheless endangers his kinsmen during their direst hours of need and is exploited by his enemies. Fury and rage are necessary emotions, but only in the rarest extremes, for their wellspring offers brutality when all other vanguards of strength abandon you. Only destruction can be wrought from such emotion, and often it is all too easy to unleash it on those undeserving its wrath. So be sure to master your anger, for within us all a beast stirs when agitated, and shall only grow in strength should steps not be taken to restrain it.